Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the soundbites. We're continuing with our candidate interviews, and joining me, wait till you see this, is very exciting. Joining me is Erynn Hazlett Whitney, who's independent and is running for Vermont governor. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Pat.
Yes, and can you introduce your little one?
Sure, this is Erynn Whitney. He's our one-year-old son, my husband and I, and he's along for the ride and here to be part of the future. So
excellent.
Thanks for letting us both in.
No problem. I'm very excited to have him. That's really cool. So you were in the National Guard service for 11 years.
Yes.
And then you stepped down to run for governor, which I think is really bold of you. That's really great.
Thank you. Yeah, so I served between active and National Guard status over the last 11 and a half years. I deployed to Afghanistan in 2010 as a logistics professional.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a life-changing experience.
I bet.
I mean, when you go into a country where children are bathing in septic water in the middle of the street and then come home after a year of being there, it just makes you value America in such a different way.
I can't imagine. Whatever I think I've seen can't possibly match with what you guys have seen or all of you seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the service members who go to places around the world probably have a whole different feeling about America and about Vermont and about families, because they see a part of the world and governments that probably aren't working the best.
Right.
And I think one of the most alarming relatable experiences that I've had was this year in Chicago. We traveled to Indiana in like end of May, early June. And Erynn and I stayed in downtown Chicago the first night of what we now know are the ongoing riots.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we went to go look at a couple different universities around the Chicago area, and we stayed not in like that little island of Chicago where Trump Tower is. Hey, he's telling you all about it. But we stayed a little bit further outside, and we knew there was going to be a protest, and we went, we had our signs, we were supporting some of the Black Lives Matter mission, but we stayed and did not know how violent it was going to get. And maybe that was super ignorant on my part coming from Vermont, you know, and sort of this, let's go protest peacefully.
Well, I hate to tell you, but it's sort of here because one of my co-hosts and I went to the State House when they were trying to honor Blue Lives, the law enforcement. And there was maybe 100 of us on one side of the lawn and an equal amount of very young, very loud.
Yeah.
And nothing bad happened, but it came so close. They ended the gathering. They told everybody to go home early because it would have taken one push, one shove, one word, and it just would have blown up.
The intensity there was so, when we were walking to grab dinner that night, several groups of black men stopped me and said, you need to get inside. This isn't the place for you right now. And so we listened, and it was traumatic. I mean, in terms of like my relatable experiences to a war zone, you know, there was explosions, there was bombs, there was helicopters, there was, in weird ways, I felt this odd, because I used to come home and say, I wish I could go back because I knew I was making a difference somewhere. And so that energy that I felt there, I was happy to bring it back to Vermont, but I also realized, and through speaking with some friends who are in sort of some special services and security forces around the country, that the aggressive component behind Black Lives Matter and watching them fight the police wasn't the mission that I was protesting for. You know, I mean, I think systemic racism and then police injustice or police justice are two totally different issues.
And most of those kids that were there really had no clue. They had no clue with what they were yelling. I know they weren't Black Lives Matter. I don't know who they were, but they used the opportunity. I actually invited somebody from Black Lives Matter to come on and just, what do you stand for? Because I don't think what we're seeing is really, I hope not anyway.
I agree with you, Pat. I think that, and especially like locally, you know, I mean, when we look at sort of what's happening in Burlington and those protesters are refusing to speak to the press, I'm begging to be heard by the press. I'm so thankful for public access and for individual media producers like this, because large dollar press don't want to hear from me because I don't have a large dollar campaign. But then here's dozens of young people who are saying they have an intent and they have a mission, but then not communicating that. And I don't find that fair to what I believe the mission of Black Lives Matter is, which means that what is their purpose? What are they trying to accomplish? And if it's just the firing of 3 police officers, then that's a really small scope.
No, I hope not. And you know, I'm sure you know, if you've presented to groups and stuff in your career, you're supposed to know your audience, and you're supposed to fine-tune your message for that audience. If it's a bunch of kids, you talk one way. If it's a bunch of old people like me, maybe you talk different. They don't understand the audience they're trying to get to, because we're so turned off that we'll never, I mean, they've got to stop if they want us to hear.
That's right. And that's the key point that I think that a lot of people are missing. And I think to myself, any one of those protesters could have put their name on the governor ballot this year. I didn't need a single signature. You can see that on the Vermont ballot with the presidencies. You know, how many people are running for? I opened it up and the ballot just kept going.
Because they didn't require signatures this year.
Right, and that worked in favor for me, who suddenly decided at last minute that this was an executable decision for me. And I wish more people took their powerful voices and put it behind a mission and put it behind an intent, and are doing something similar to like what I'm trying to do, and try to be heard in a productive way.
Well, let's talk about some of those priorities that you've got on your website, and a few other areas that I sort of looked around and saw some of your videos, which were very good, by the way.
Thank you.
So you've got, let's see, command, I'm going to read them, and then maybe we can go back and talk about them. Command the troops, because the governor is the governor, whatever they was it, commander-in-chief? Yeah, just like the president. Tax marijuana, universal income, reparations, paid family leave, command climate of the guard. That's interesting. Recreation, economy, and education. So let's go to the command the troops. What is your thoughts about that as the governor?
So that's that was pretty much the first reason I decided to run for governor, was commanding the troops. Over the years, I've found that the strength of the National Guard is much weaker in terms of number size than what we are receiving funding for. So we receive, it's basically a $5 return for every dollar invested from the general fund for our armed forces. It's a service members have a big dollar bill over their head in Vermont. And what is happening is we are sending troops to these intense scaled training exercises, but because we don't have enough people, we're generally doing survival training as opposed to skills training. And people are getting hurt, people are dying, they've had a couple fatalities, and we also just don't really have good morale because of that. If you sort of think, if everyone's working extra hard, but then there's no relief coming in, what is the point of working extra hard? There's no downtime or break. And in terms of the ethical leadership of the National Guard, you know, my story is similar to many others, but I was a victim of sexual assault in the service. And
may I ask you where that was? Was it here in Vermont?
That was here stateside. Yeah, so the sexual assault that I reported was here in Jericho. On one of the training sites there, and it was the marketing NCO at the time who sexually assaulted me during a flag football game, or like flag frisbee or something, you know. And when I reported it several weeks later, my boss said, you know, this is gonna change your life by reporting this. It's not
so they discouraged you?
Well, the way you report sexual assaults in the service, you have one of two options. You can report it so that there is an investigation, or you can report it just to receive sort of support and help that way. So we had this big meeting, all the female recruiters and I, with our direct leadership and at the time the Inspector General, and reported this man specifically for multiple instances of just just sort of toxic gender climate, right? Just really gross, non-good stuff. And I got to the point where I decided that if this was a closed-door meeting, which was the way that we had talked about it, it was a safe place for me to let them know that, you know, we're not just saying that this man says inappropriate things. This man has done inappropriate things. So my decision to necessarily report it wasn't totally meant to be the investigative process, but my leader, who made the absolute best decision, you know, he reported it. And he said at this point, now that there is a service member who's reported this man for sexual assault, even though over the 10 years he was in the recruiting and retention battalion, there had been reports of gross behavior. So my investigation it took about 2.5 years, almost 3. It has to go first to the state police because we are funded through state dollars. And then it goes to the National Guard, and then, hey, baby, let's play
I was actually commissioner of personnel, and I got involved in one of the National Guard investigations years ago. Hi, sweet pea.
It's complex, right?
For sure.
It's so big. And so with the National Guard, we're also a subcomponent of either the Air Force or the Army. So for us, it was the Army. So there's huge, huge levels of federal involvement and state involvement in any of these cases. So that does mean that at times it takes a little bit longer, but we also found out that there was some very high-level senior leaders who were just taking as much time as possible or forgetting the investigation, and in doing so, that man retired. So he became eligible for a full medical retirement. And in my investigation, it uncovered that he had done this multiple times before. The guard had just sort of shoved it under the rug. And so that sort of ethical oversight and structure has to start from the top. And I've been a soldier underneath Governor Scott for 4 years now, and then Governor Shumlin before that. And Governor Shumlin is not an appropriate leader at all. So the two of them together, and then with Lieutenant Governor Zuckerman underneath Governor Scott, I just don't feel the National Guard has any commander-in-chief qualities in any of these governor candidates, which made it imperative as we about to send the National Guard onto a tri-fold deployment.
Who was the AG, not the AG, the Adjutant General when you filed this complaint and had that meeting? Was that Martha Rainville? Or
no,
was it,
so I don't think I served underneath Martha Rainville. Yeah, she, but it was General Cray.
Cray.
Yes, and General Cray was the general, as all the Vermont Digger articles came out 2 or 3 years ago.
That's great.
And now it's General Knight. So we're just.
I worked very hard for Martha when she was running, and I just love her so. She's great.
I got to meet her through a teleconference, so that was pretty neat. It was,
she's great. I couldn't believe when she lost, but there you go. She was running against Peter Welch. But anyway, there we go. It's politics. So, because I want to make sure we have enough time to go through all these. You want to tax marijuana?
I do. I mean, I think culturally, Vermont is a cannabis epicenter. I mean, we could have done it first, and we missed that. And then we're now maybe 6th or 7th in the country that could do it. I always had this vision of us doing it first and then challenging the federal aviation with air transport from Washington to Colorado, because I really just like to push the limits.
I don't think the feds have changed their mind, though.
No, but, I mean, talking about taxing cannabis and getting the feds involved, I'm part of the generation where we're losing so many community members to the opioid epidemic.
Well, that's true.
I think the state police are great, and luckily we have a trooper in Bennington County, Trooper Irwin, who took his experience with and was able to charge a drug dealer just recently.
Oh, really?
With a reasonable charge that hopefully will leave this drug dealer convicted. So that's the path we need to take. But we also clearly need another level of police involvement.
Well, they've got a team of troopers that are really working hard. Mostly at the lower level, it's easier to work, down, bottom up sort of thing. So let's talk a little bit about universal income. I thought what you were saying about that was very interesting.
So I think think a universal income in Vermont would be super effective. We have so many programs that suck up so much of our state budget. And when I say suck up our state budget, there's also all the red tape that goes along with that and the employees that oversee all of those departments. And if we merged that into just a simple deposit for people who qualify, as opposed to the third-party system of paying this out with subsidies, there's no doubt we would want to eliminate government jobs, which would save tax dollars. And then two, give people power over the services that they're receiving as opposed to being dependent. I mean, there's clearly a support base that is necessary here in Vermont.
I love that phrase that the cap agencies use. They give a hand up, not a handout. And I think that's what people need. Because they need to feel supported and helped.
But also, I mean, I think as humans, we want to be empowered, I hope. You know, that's sort of the people. I mean, Vermonters are workers. We are doers.
We are. That is true. Hard workers.
So it makes sense.
I'm afraid he's going to get a shock.
I know. I'm afraid of that too. Here, Hazen, come on over here, babe.
Look. Does this bring back memories, folks? I'm impressed that you could chat and have a conversation while we're dealing with the little one.
You know, I mean, I think as a new mom.
Don't put that in your mouth.
And as someone who's pretty good at handling a lot of
You're doing good.
Multitasking women generally do that. Families do that. This is just a whole new realm for me.
Well, I think families, especially because of COVID. I couldn't think of the word. Because of COVID, I know my cousins work for a ski area, and they're both home.
Yeah.
And they. The husband takes 2 hours to work while she watches the kids, and then they switch, so their life is upside down.
It's totally nuts. It's totally crazy. And now we have kids that if they have the sniffles are being sent home from school.
Oh, I know. Well, they're afraid.
I know. There's so much fear.
Exactly. So let's talk about something that I told you before the show. Reparation. Tell me what you're thinking about reparation.
Yeah, so I think with reparations, there's sort of a bigger picture that I'm trying to portray, which I'm not doing it well because people get confused. I'm trying to increase the population of Vermont so that we can afford services and we can afford sort of an infrastructure, government infrastructure that we can't right now. And so when I view reparations in Vermont specifically, I view them in the form of land or home grants, so that we can specifically bring diversity to Vermont, not as a handout for, hey, your ancestor was a slave, but maybe as a, hey, you served a little bit of one of the ideas, and people, it really scares people, but you served 10 years for growing marijuana in Tennessee. Well, wait a second, I'm trying to tax and grow marijuana. How can I ethically make money off of that when I know that there are people who have gone to jail and to me, their skills shouldn't be shameful anymore. And we could solve a lot of different purposes and plans by doing something like that. It's totally radical.
Yeah, I'm just struggling with who gets it and who doesn't. And how do you, I mean, my family came way beyond, I mean, you know, it wasn't 150 years of the Civil War. I mean, they came maybe 100 years ago and had nothing to do with the Civil War. So I think having land is like a gift from heaven. I mean, I think if we could do that, I think people, the more I'm thinking about it, people would feel obligated to work the land, to you know, to be part of the community because now they own something within.
To invest in themselves, their family, their community, their future. I mean, it's sort of hypocritical for me to say, hey, let's give a universal income for a hand up. But that's also hopefully meant to be short term so people can get on their feet. Exactly. Whereas land investment is long term. It's supposed to help create that generational wealth that what I believe through a national system has sort of been withheld from the Black community.
I'm sort of getting that, but I wouldn't want to give cash because I just like food stamps. If you give somebody food stamps, they should be able to do what they want with it. And a lot of people want to put restrictions on it. And I would think the same if they gave money. They would say, well, you can only use it for this, this, and this. Well, if you want to give a person a hand up, you have to trust them.
Right, and
the land is the land.
And the land is land, yeah. And what they decide to do with that and how they invest in that is their prerogative. But
right.
It brings people here.
Yeah, no, that would be great. That'd be like the land rush of.
Well, right, like pioneers.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm going to paid family leave. I think we all know what that is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's really even a conversation that Vermont should be having at this point in terms of implementing, because we don't have the cash or the financial infrastructure to even implement something like this. I was fortunate enough to having committed my life to the service to receive great family leave and benefits.
Right.
But that wasn't just a given. I sacrificed a lot for those things.
For sure.
I mean,
just
like I sacrificed.
Well, leaving your family, for how long were you gone?
That was a year after the 6 months I was gone for training, you know, and even not to mention just the drill weekends that service members give up and that type of thing. But I think in a dream society, absolutely, parents should have the opportunity to be home with their children because it helps the children. I mean, the development that children receive and their total cognitive concept and trust.
Yeah, right. The growth is in the beginning.
It is.
That's right.
So when I hear of families with moms going back to work so early, that makes me sad, of course. And I do think that it is a goal.
I mean, family leave itself is a whole new, in my generation, when I had my daughter, I better get back real quick or my job is gone.
Gone, right? I mean,
you know, that you just accepted it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, are you part of the generation as well that you needed your husband's signature for a credit card early on?
Oh, I don't remember that.
My therapist told me that in her first marriage, and she needed a signature for a credit card. Yeah,
that must have been before me, because I would have objected to that one.
I know. I'm like, really?
No. Wow, I have to go check on that one. That's
RBG is helpful for that.
Yeah. You talked here about the command climate of the Guard, because you were also talking about what happened to you when you were pregnant, and just the climate.
Yeah, the climate is really bad. I mean, I went to the unit that I ended up serving in while I was pregnant with the stigma of reporting a sexual assault. So that carried with me.
Wow.
But I have to say, most of the harassment in the National Guard that I experienced from being pregnant came from women.
Wow, why?
I think that the survival culture that women have in the service right now, in terms of just sort of like taking care of themselves in this sort of dog-eat-dog race, like if I attack someone, then I know that if they leave, they won't come after my job type of mentality is so real, and it's super prevalent in women. I mean, there are women across the service that at times, whether they follow sort of like the uniform regulation is a good thing. Women are like, oh, they don't follow the uniform regulation, but some women latch onto that as sort of their identity, and like, you can't tell me what to do because I'm a woman, and it's like, whoa, we have to start from
servicemen and women.
Right. Yeah. It's a toxic place for a lot of different types of environments.
Is this known or recognized in the upper echelons of the Guard, or?
Well,
because I know somebody who just passed away in the Guard, and
I'm sorry.
He was had cancer from the burn pits.
The burn pits, and I forget his name. I'm sorry, but he's
that's okay.
Very high ranking.
Oh yeah, right. He was my husband's a retired trooper, and he was a trooper with my husband.
Okay.
And used to be Governor Dean's Mike Heston used to be Governor Dean's security, so I knew him from up in the State House.
Yeah.
Just a fab. I just can't. What you're telling me and my knowing about Mike, just doesn't compute.
It's hard, right? And I think that sometimes when we hear about, we want to hear the great parts of the service.
Right.
Because there's so few people in the service. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot in Vermont. Let's be very clear about that. Vermont has a large population of veterans and service members and armed officers. We love it. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. And I don't want to just focus on the shame. You know, I don't want to just focus on the bad, because there are so many soldiers who are amazing and incredible. But yeah, I mean, I think that when we look at some of the highest leadership levels, you know, we have service members who are in the highest ranks that came from the Air Force and the Navy, and we don't know, but we've questioned if they were, you know, in Las Vegas as part of that Tuskegee Air Force scandals.
That's right.
You know, so there's a lot of questions about just sort of the the vision that these senior leaders have as opposed to the reality and what we project. We don't need to project all the bad. We don't. I mean, that's not the purpose of my campaign. Because I think most of us feel
our Green Mountain boys and girls are just a stellar group.
They are. I mean, we wouldn't rank nationally and receive funding nationally.
And get the F-35.
Which is amazing, right? I mean, when I hear of people who rally against it, it hurts my heart. Because,
I do too.
I mean, we know that Vermont was the first in the air for 9/11. I mean, we have interviews with pilots who were wondering if they were going to need to shoot down civilian planes, but they didn't. And they, you know, because we responded so fast, we are heroes in Vermont. We have heroes. And I'm not, like I said, and that's why, for me, that oversight position, H401, was so critical to not hiding the bad parts, but fixing them.
Fixing them.
And so then we can get back and focus on these F-35 missions and our international deployments.
There's some kind of training program for helicopters, and they go over my house maybe once a week. I run out every time. I've been there 26 years. I watch them, and I'm like, thank you.
We love them too, down in southern Vermont. We look forward to them, and we like them. And, you know, I'm at the point too where I would not be afraid to seek permission to move some of the aviation flights down to like a Bennington facility because Bennington is desperate for economic development.
Yeah, it's bad.
And like I said, there's a $5 federal investment for every dollar that the Vermont revenue spends. So I will take $133 million down in Bennington County, and I don't know many people in Bennington County who would say no to that.
No, exactly.
So I find
the objection to F-35s just. So when you move near an airport, just saying, when your house is near an airport.
Expect aviation, one way or the other.
Just saying. You know, it's like, really? Let's just skip to education because I've got so many things I want to ask you. Let's talk about education. You have that on your website, so what?
So for education in Vermont, I think I'm a big, strong pro 2A. I mean, just in terms of like taking some of Vermont's values and applying them into the school system is critical. I mean, I think in terms of 2A, I mean, we know that middle schoolers can definitely train on weapon familiarization, and then it doesn't become scary. And that can be an opt-in or an opt-out. That should never be a requirement, you know. But
that's great.
We have hunters all over the state. We have people who value the right to carry their firearms, and I love the hunter safety programs that we have, and I would love to see those implemented and offered in a school setting. My grandfather and some of the men I've spoken to, and I say men because that's who tells me these stories, would go to school with their rifles to go hunting afterwards. And that's even some of the 45, 50-year-olds. So younger sort of people who remember Vermont not that long ago. I also think gardening, you know, like in terms of sustainability.
Exactly. Learning how to grow food.
And a lot of schools have sort of grasped onto that in the last 5 or 10 years. And I think sometimes I push that because I didn't get that. And so I feel sad, and I want to make sure that kids in Vermont have that opportunity.
Yeah, we do that here in one of our local schools, and they've got these big boxes that the kids plant, and it's just great. I'm sure they must enjoy their first harvest, right from the ground. I mean, how cool is that?
Hazen, we have a garden. This is our first year because it's the first year I haven't been driving around the state.
I'm so afraid you're going to get
This
shocked.
One makes me nervous too. I want you to play with your little dinosaur.
We provide everything here in this show.
Yeah, right? This is wonderful. I walked in. I said, "Look, it's almost set up as a play place."
That's great.
So education, there's a lot of components. You know, even just basic budgeting. It's just not taught. We could do so much better, and we have great students and we have great young adults, but they leave Vermont. So,
but we have the University of Vermont and all of our schools where kids from out of state come to Vermont because they love Vermont, and we never spend the time to talk to those kids. What would make them stay? They chose Vermont for a reason: the snow and the fishing and the summer, whatever, hiking. And we just seem to ignore them, and I don't understand that because they're here.
Right, they are here, and so we have an opportunity to keep them.
Yeah, what are they studying? What do they want to pursue? Bring in some jobs.
What's their future look like, and how can we shape our economy to make it? Oh, Hazen, look at this. Let's look in your backpack.
Right, so you have a lot to say, I love this, about COVID.
Oh,
could you talk a little bit about COVID the governor's handling of COVID? And
so I think the governor, I believe, I hope he had everyone's best intentions in mind, but I think we've just taken such an extreme measure to handle something and now to prevent something that isn't here. I mean, even just now listening to what the governor's panel puts out, we have like a 2% autoimmune or antibody rate compared to like New York has a 22% antibody rate.
And what does that mean, antibody
Well, so
rate?
think about antibodies with breast milk. You know, so we say that antibodies help protect the young or help protect
and why
your
do we
body.
have
because we've shut it down completely. We haven't had the opportunity for our bodies to build up
which
the
could
antibodies.
open us to the flu and everything else, right?
And if the goal is to
makes sense.
keep us shut down until there's a vaccine, that's just not fair. I mean, that's super forceful and out of control power.
Right.
I have a lot to say about masks. I think if we're going to open up hospitality to a point where we can fill a hotel, but I still need to wear a mask, that's crazy.
Right.
I don't actually really understand a word for that other than abuse of power.
Right. Well, I must say, though, Vermont, from all the other states, is doing really well, but maybe you're saying it's too well.
But is it too well?
Yeah,
right. But at some point, we have to sort of, we want kids to get colds so that they build up an immune system. Right. I got H1N1 in 2009, and I sometimes wonder if I have natural antibodies to more, because I don't really get sick, but I got really sick many years ago. Who knows? I'm not a scientist. I'm a service member.
Well,
I'm a leader. I'm not a scientist.
That's why when they don't want to expose kids to anything when they're young, and I always thought you can expose them to build up the antibodies.
Yeah, I mean, I love my kid. He plays in the dirt.
I
make sure he doesn't
I was a big dirt eater. And here I am. Maybe it helped me grow. I'm so tall.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I just let's talk a little bit about the governorship itself. Mm-hmm. What would you like to, if you get in to be the governor, what would you like to see? What would you like to do first, I guess? What would you like to see the state happen here?
Between passing like a oversight position for the Guard, that's the critical component for why I ran that H401 that specifically oversees the sexual assault and diversity investigations.
Right.
So it just puts a set of eyes on it so it doesn't take 2.5 years so assaulters retire. Yeah. That's really the whole point, is to make sure that the victim has the opportunity to keep their career while the assaulter may not. I'm sorry if that man was in for 13, 14 years before me. He still did something wrong.
Right. And he knew it.
And he knew it. And people around him knew it. So having that oversight position, that bill also studied women's careers. Because like you said, I've been in for 11 years. Yeah. Women generally get out at 12 because the lack of promotion and leadership opportunities.
Oh, really?
So what that bill would have done was studied women's careers, not by name, not by, but just this is the number that is coming in. These are the numbers that are going out. What's the long-term rate of investment? And these, I'm not saying that because I'm a woman, I'm a great leader, but I'm a quality soldier. I've been a rock star recruiter and a rock star soldier for years, and yet I'm getting out. So there's that would be first. But then we also, if Governor Scott doesn't take the opportunity to sign into legislation a bill for taxing marijuana, I would love to do it. That would be historic for Vermont, and it's what needs to happen next. Right. And then I want to open up the ATV and bass trails for registration. I think those three components will allow me to command effectively while watching the National Guard and observing them and leading them through their deployments, plus also working on intense regulation with police, with cannabis culture, and then opening up our outdoor recreation, which so many Vermonters love and want to do. Right. And those things are going to bring money in while we work on scaling down the government to stop spending so much money.
Right, exactly. So we've been talking a lot about racism here in Vermont. Mm-hmm. Is there racism in the Guard or not? I look at the Guard as multi-racial, and it's not a big deal, but I may be wrong.
I'm not gonna. I can't speak in terms of like Black people racist against me. I I would say that I experienced that more on a national level, introducing myself in basic training when black, white, brown, yellow, everybody comes together for the first time. But soldiers are trained like from the very beginning that we're green.
Right, green.
It's not about the color of our skin. It's about accomplishing the mission.
Right.
So I think that soldiers have probably, I would hope, some of the most equal non-racial bias in Vermont.
I would hope that's my impression. I would hope that's the case because sometimes I always say on the show I live in a cocoon because I don't see a lot of the things that people are talking about.
Right.
And I don't know whether it's my fault or not, but I just don't see
I don't think it's your fault. I think it's where we live. It's where you live. It's where I live, you know? I mean, and I think Vermonters in a way, even if you are in like a Montpelier area or a more populated area, because it's so hard to live here, I don't know if we're always go out of our way super neighborly. I think we're friendly.
Yeah, right.
I think we're and so when I hear about, I will never say that there's not racism in Vermont. You know, I mean, I think that's we can see that, and we hear from Black Vermonters and Vermonters of color that there is racism. But I believe that a lot of that just comes from like there's such our low diversity numbers. I mean,
there's 1.4% blacks. 4% all minorities. I mean, what is that?
What is that? Right. And so I mean, when we talk about racism, I also wonder if there's just lack of education and familiarization. And so I mean, when we look at an all white state like this, basically, we do have to listen to the Black Vermonters and Vermonters of color because we need to hear their experiences. Just like in the service, you need to hear from the people who end up being, you know, victims, so we can fix the problem.
That's great. Have you ever expressed this up to the governor and up the chain of command?
Up the chain of command. I think that my time spent in the service was really busy training and paying and that type of thing. And only once I sort of started realizing that in terms of the gender inequality of the service that I could use my voice. And there's also a, you know, I mean, with the Hatch Act, it's a little bit intense to voice political things. I mean, soldiers are saying it right now in terms of even advocating for me.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, that Hatch Act, I tell you the truth, it's very confusing. Because I work for state government and then... but the Hatch Act gets everybody, it's very involved.
It is.
When you can and when you can't speak out and what you can do.
Right, and the whole, what I like to take from it is just leave your uniform at home. You know, when you're in your green, you're green. And that means you're not red, you're not blue, you're not racial, you're green. And you have to be a neutral force for that. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I hope they're paying attention. So speaking of green, the Global Warming Solutions Act. Getting to be one of my favorite acts because now that I'm understanding what the heck they did, I mean, really.
It's really scary,
yeah.
right?
People don't get it.
No, and I think, you know, coming from the Defense Force, that 23-member committee has no defense representation. Yeah. Yes, unelected, just appointed. There's a child who can literally vote to sue the state.
Yeah, right.
Yes, that's so the Global Warming Solutions Act doesn't take into like thought or consideration any part of the defense mission in Vermont, which is shameful.
Oh, interesting.
But I also think that what it does is it puts fear in Vermonters right now that we're going to have to start giving up more and it's going to get harder. So for my husband, who's an excavator operator, and we have an excavation business, we're thinking taxes for diesel, for our equipment, for our registrations, and we're already only able to work 6 months out of the year. He's got to think of all kinds of
things, runoff, water runoff,
all of it.
Kinds of things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so we're well, what did we say? I said, Sawyer, we got to hope that Governor Scott's veto sticks. And if it doesn't, we got to hope I win. Because I just don't really see Vermont heading in the direction that fixes problems right now. The Global Warming Solutions Bill fixes problems 100 years from now. We have Vermonters like myself who don't have running water, and I need the income from my husband's job in order to drill into the earth to get water. And so this bill doesn't solve problems today for Vermonters, and we already have created a state where plastic bags are shameful, and yet straws,
exactly.
and yet here I am going through a dozen of these a week, So I'm nervous about it, and again, it's such a complex bill, and what the power that this committee has is.
And what surprises me, almost the same legislature went crazy when we had a 5-member unelected board for Vermont Yankee. They just went completely nuts. Now we've got a 24-member board, and when you were talking about, people can sue the state now anyway. But why would you, encourage them? Just like waving a flag, come sue us. What?
Make us vulnerable.
Right.
Why does Vermont want to be at the grasp of an agenda? I mean, I think Vermont is green. I think we are earthy. I think we are already what this bill is promoting.
Right.
So why are we being held hostage to our own nature?
And because we're so small, we could stand on our head and do everything possible, which in some cases is a good thing, but we won't change that needle one iota for the world.
The world, right.
I mean, whatever we do, it's not going to do anything. So.
No, I mean, the Think Global, Act Local, I can't even get behind it because the COVID response is killing more people from global hunger because of our interrupted logistics line than could ever die of coronavirus.
Yes,
so
we heard the other day that 1 in 4 Vermonters deal with food insufficiency. You've talked a lot about, we talked about the budget here. This year we're going to be okay to balance the budget, but next year is going to be just a horror between the revenues lost, expenses that we've put out. I mean, I think you've alluded to a smaller government, bringing more people in. I don't know if you have anything else to add to.
I mean, I think what Vermont needs to do with its budget is what Vermonters across the board have had to do this year as they've lost their income. You can't just keep spending money.
No,
I mean, that's just not how finance works. So across the board, any governor that's elected, if they don't take drastic cuts, then we're just setting Vermont up to fail again. We're setting it to fail for my son. And I mean, what is it, a $6 billion deficit for back pensions, right?
$5.4 billion. I mean,
we owe so many Vermonters, and we're going to continue to owe Vermonters who have sacrificed and served our state, and we don't have a plan for that.
Yeah, and the treasurer has a plan, but what she's done, which I don't understand, we had an 8% return on investment originally, and she moved it down to 7-something. I'm like, who gets 7% return on investment? So I don't think it's a real...
like a plausible, actionable
I mean, I don't know about you,
solution.
But if I get 2%, I'm thrilled to death. So where do they get the 7? But maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a treasurer by any means.
But we need to fix these problems before we start adding more services.
We've made promises to all us retirees.
Yep,
that's me.
Exactly, it's you.
Thank you.
I mean, and it's your husband who served in the police force. It's the veterans of the service before and of past police officer. It's so many your generation and your demographic. And we say we're shutting everything down because these high risk demographics. We're also just making it even harder for you and the retirement that you guys have worked for.
Whatever you think you're going to have when you retire, double it.
Okay.
Because I'm good, and it's just not. It's not. So there you go. So
he's in Matumbo.
I think that you've pretty much covered a lot of stuff. You were talking about regulations, and that's something that's got to be addressed in this state.
Yeah, so when I think about childcare, I mean, needing to have a bachelor's degree in order to open up a childcare center is that's so ludicrous. I mean, we have literal high school students who have babies, and we send them home. What? And I'm not saying we should not be sending babies home with their parents. What I'm saying is it's up to the parents who decide who watches their children and who's qualified to watch their children. That has no involvement for the state.
Daycare center here is so expensive. When I came up from New York, I was actually thinking...
Matumbo.
Oh, you have to explain that word.
So it came from my husband's side of the family. His stepfather used to do it with them. There was a basketball player that when he would go to make a slam dunk or something like that, his name was Matumbo, and so if someone would try to block him, he'd go, I don't think so. So we go, Matumbo, I don't think so.
Cute.
So when Hazen sees, he's very he's got an engineering or analytical mind because he's into electricity and clocks. And so when he goes up to them, if we say Matumbo, he'll do this himself.
Oh, really?
So
we're
starting to try to get
excellent.
a behavior pattern in shape there.
Nice.
So we're trying.
Oh, it's a different word, so that's good.
Right, and it's not stop. We did try danger at first, but then that almost like solicited a laugh.
Yeah.
Well, it was like, oh gosh.
I tried no with my grandchildren, and my daughter called me up. She says, "Mom, are you saying no to
Matumbo,
to the kids?" And I'm like, "Yes." What am I supposed to say? And she said, "You're supposed to say, that's not good." That, talk to them like they're grown-ups. I'm like, I don't know. I think no is, you could yell it.
Sufficient. It's quick. It's to the point. No. Yeah. But back to regulations, we talked about what am I going to do if I lose? And we talked like, okay, well, something to be home because we still aren't, the child care issue is still sort of an issue. So we talked about opening up a home bakery. So a home bakery is subject to inspection by the state if it makes more than $6,500 a year.
And if you make less, who cares?
Right. And so in my mind, I'm like,
sorry.
okay.
I have to ask what they're making in the bakery.
And if I'm if I'm interested in being a at-home small business owner, and I want to make enough money to pay my bills, but say, for us, we're redoing the tile in our kitchen.
Yeah.
So I probably, and I don't know the specifics of the inspection, but I highly doubt a regulated state like Vermont would come in and be like, well, you've got exposed drywall, so you cannot have this bakery in this kitchen. And so it just, things like that, come on. At least make it 25. At least meet the minimum wage threshold so we can get to a point where we can make enough to pay some bills as small business owners. So it's just, there's these little regulations that just stop entrepreneurship.
Well, and most of them are made just for a specific issue. It's not like 1,000 people are doing it. I know somebody that did it, so therefore we have to write a bill.
Yeah.
And they don't have that broad, because I thought after Tropical Storm Irene, where my road was actually redone by the people on the road, and it has not caused a problem ever since. And I thought for sure when we got back to the legislature, there would be this effort to drop a lot of the regulations. No.
None.
They just had passed more.
Right.
It was ridiculous because we showed we could do it ourselves.
And and to me, I think that a Democrat-run government they want more government. I mean, that's ultimately the whole purpose, which is why I think the Democrats have latched on to the Black Lives Matter movement, trying to say, we're here for you, we support equality, when really they just want more dependency on government. And to me, working against systemic racism is saying we want less government involvement. So I do feel that this racial hijacking of this equality and this justice movement, the Democrats have just sort of blinded my generation to believe that Democrat means equal, and it doesn't at all.
When you look back, just be honest about where we are, and it hasn't worked. My take on the Black Lives Matter, maybe I'm really wrong and I'm going to get a lot of phone calls, is that it's our turn. All lives matter, maybe someday we'll get there, but right now it's our turn to speak up. But they're speaking up in such a bad way that we're not listening.
Right.
And if they want to be heard, they've got to change the way they're approaching it.
Right. Burning newspapers is not the way.
Right, and buildings and whatever else they were doing in Seattle was just...
Oh, the hijacking of their whole city was really scary. Yeah.
I'm waiting for us to get the bill for that one. I'm just thrilled.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's ways to get your message across. Right. Even just this campaign, I'm learning that there are ways that are effective and not effective, and there are a lot of people who are choosing social media to make their political discussions and ideologies, but that's not appropriate either. No, social media is made to give you what you're looking for, not what is real. And so my generation specifically, we need to come out of this bubble, and we need to, demand power and accountability and control, but the right way. You know, I mean, get on the ballot, and if you know, get people to listen in a way that will actually make change, not destruction.
And find out what the person would vote for. Even the ones that are in the legislature now, people have no idea. Well, they're always at events, but that doesn't mean anything. It's how do they vote?
Yes.
And I mean, they're nice. Most of them are nice, and they show up for the pot pie dinners and blah, blah, blah. But how did they vote on one issue or whatever?
Right.
So,
what's the record?
yeah,
Absolutely.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But people, we don't ask that.
No,
we
Cynthia
just
Browning
like them.
is from Arlington.
Yeah.
She's one of our representatives.
Oh, I love her.
I think she's amazing. And when she asked for the quorum earlier this year, she was attacked violently.
It was vicious, and she was right.
She was 100% right. She's like a constitutionalist in my mind, you know, and she needs to be. I would love to see her run on a national level, she's amazing.
Her first vote. I'm trying to remember what the bill was, but she completely voted against her party.
Right.
And those of us who were on the other party were like, whoa, who's this woman? She votes her mind. Very few others do. If the party says vote no, they vote no. If it says yes, vote yes. Yeah. And Cynthia just does what she thinks is right, and she can back up her vote. She
sends us in Arlington this like 4 or 5 page what she voted on, the bill and why, and it's so descriptive and it's so informative, and she's honest about it, and that's what I'm glad she's running as an independent this year. I was very proud of her.
Oh, did she? I didn't catch that. Oh, good for her.
She did. She went independent.
I have to have her on the show. I just love her because
I feel lucky that she is able, and for a little while, I mean, and I have to say, when she ran 2 years ago, I was endorsing the Republican and the Democrat, and I didn't endorse her because I wanted Kathleen James because she was at the events and she was, and I realized in the last couple years, it's not like you're saying, it's not who's at the events, it's how they're voting,
because
and
that one vote could change. I mean, some of our key votes were won and lost by one.
Yeah.
I think gay marriage was won by one vote.
Yeah.
Civil unions, and no, the gay marriage, the marriage bill, the civil unions was.
That was a long time ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. But anyway, then there was one other one, and I can't remember, of an important bill, one vote. So, and they actually brought somebody back from their vacation to vote because they knew that it was going to be close.
Yeah.
So anyway. I have one other question that I wanted to ask you. We are partners with Campaign for Vermont, and they worked really hard a couple of years ago to get an ethics bill put into the legislature, and the legislature created an ethics committee, but with absolutely no teeth, no nothing. And I think it's important because people don't have a place to go. If you know somebody has acted unethically, this is the place where you can go and have it pursued. But I'm not sure how you, but I would think I could guess how you're going to answer.
I mean, I'm going to advocate for any type of ethical opportunity for people to have a voice, because that's sort of the platform of why I'm deciding to run after my experience in the service. So for me, ethics have to be involved, and I didn't, here, when you wrote about it, it was me having to sort of research it a little bit and do that type of thing, which means that it's not obvious for constituents to know about.
And I don't think a lot of legislators are happy about it. Yeah, I mean, because we say it's a small state and we know everybody, but I don't know what investments you have.
Right.
I don't know, and you don't know what I have. I don't want you to know, but if I have an investment in Sun Common, I can't vote on a bill that's going to make it good for them, so I have to recuse myself.
Yeah, I mean, well, so I guess I could relate this to my argument, or my sort of like, what about me argument. Governor Scott, when he decided to run, he had to sell his shares in his brother's company because they had so many government contracts. So he started his campaign life with $2.5 million.
Right.
I mean, it sounds like a great start to a campaign season. I started -10 because the government still owes me money. So, ethics needs to be, I'm so sorry, I'm going to spend a lot of time cleaning up in a minute.
That's okay.
Ethics needs to be involved in every level, and clearly it's not, because we have senators that went against the governor's veto after many constituents said don't do it.
No, exactly.
And they voted for the
people
agenda.
Called about this.
Yeah. I have not met someone in my region who's like, yeah, I wanted that to pass, other than the representatives who were in favor of it and probably took lobby money.
Yeah, we had the abortion bill, and there were so many people opposed to the 9-month abortion.
Yeah.
And they called and called and called, and I think it was 9-1. 9 people against, 1 for.
I mean, I think that speaks volumes on so many different bills that have passed in recent past in Vermont. The agenda is not for the Vermonter anymore. It's for some bigger picture and trying to make a statement. And I think statements are important to be made. But if you can't vote for your constituents, then get out. You're not really the person.
Don't make it a career while you're at it.
Right. Yeah.
Because something happens within the State House that becomes your world, and you really do forget why the heck you're there, because it's all about the power within the State House.
Yeah.
I think. And you've got to remember, wait a minute, there's people back home in my town that are expecting me to do X, Y, and Z.
For them. Right. There's a lot of people who, don't view some of the things that I am running for in the same way. And if I win, I have to go with the majority, whether whether I agree with it or not. When I was a high school senior, we had a school print publication. And I was the manager of the Point Counterpoint, for the debate columns. And I would take positions that I didn't agree with so I could learn, and so I could try to understand if, why does someone believe this, and really try to research it and understand it so that it doesn't have to. Hazen, Matumbo, please, thank you.
Sounds like the Lion King movie.
I know, right? And I think some of that ability to critical think that way and to put yourself in other positions comes from analogies and that sort of original English literature and being able to understand what this word means comparatively to this word and opposite. And we don't do that anymore.
Well, because we used a big argument about shall and will. Will means you will. Yep. And there's may, that means, well, maybe you can, maybe you don't. But there's big arguments about, and we don't do that, and we don't compromise anymore. No,
it's one or the other. And that's why I think we are so extreme and polarized right now. We're not going forward. We're circling around because we're just doing this. So
we've almost run out of time, and I'd like to give you a chance to say why your constituents should vote for you.
Yeah.
That stump speech thing.
I know, that elevator pitch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Vermonters should vote for me because I'm a Vermonter. I've been here for a really long time. My roots sort of keep me stuck here. But I also want the best for Vermont long term. I'm looking at a future for my son. I'm looking at a future for my husband and I in terms of business owners. I'm looking at a future for my friends who come over for dinner. And they're leaving. And I want a successful Vermont. I want Vermont to be appreciated the way that I appreciate it. And right now, I don't think that the governor candidates and the current governor are really making choices that are best for the working family, and that's who I am. I'm the one who still has a heart attack when I go up to the grocery line because I've had my card declined before.
Yeah.
I still know what it's like to work 2 or 3 jobs. We struggle with having to figure childcare out, and that's why my son's here right now. I'm the Vermonter that wants to make Vermont family friendly again, and I don't see that happening. And I've just seen time and time again people with trust funds or people who don't have the lifetime experience or that hands-on experience making decisions that are hurting Vermont families, and we have to do better.
Great. I really wish you a lot of luck. You're very articulate, very energetic. I've enjoyed the show. Thank you. And I love your son.
Oh, he's pretty
adorable.
Cool, right?
Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, keep listening beyond the sound bites.